task force. We have a lot to cover here, and I am aware that we have many speakers who would like to provide input, and we want to honor and respect that, but also note that we do have a full agenda this afternoon, so we are going to ask folks to be wary of the time when that time comes. And Jerry's, huh? No, we'll start. So, and Jerry is going to be passing out quite a lot of things, she tells me, for us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chancellor Scott, and then we can go into our public comment and then board comment.
Well, you've heard the term, oh wait, I'm going to plug in here. You've heard the term Student Success Task Force so many times today that you may be sick of it, but I will briefly explain a little bit how the Student Success Task Force got started, what its membership was, what the process is going to be from this day forward. We had a bill last year that we felt would have been rather damaging to community colleges. It was a bill that said, in effect, that all community college funding would be based upon course completion. All of us banded together to indicate, when I say all of us, I mean all of us in the community colleges, faculty, administration, Community College League, Chancellor's Office, to point out that this would have a lot of unintended consequences. But from that came a Senate Bill 1143 that did say that there would be the creation of a Student Success Task Force to study the whole idea of student success. I guess if you've been reading the newspaper, you know that that's a very important question. In fact, there was a recent study that simply said that the failure of community college students to fail to continue and complete the first year was costing American taxpayers $4 billion. Now, frankly, I think there were some errors in that estimate, and so I didn't take it at face value. But I simply quote that to you to say that there's no way we can avoid the whole issue of student success. In fact, there's no way we want to avoid that, because all of us in the community colleges are very interested in seeing that students succeed. So we appointed a task force, and it was approved by this particular body. In fact, 2 members of this body serve on that task force. One chairs it, Dr. Peter McDougall, and another one, Manuel Baca, is our representative, also on the task force. That 20-member task force had 5 faculty members, 4 of whom were appointed by the Academic Senate. It had 3 college presidents. It had a classified representative, a student representative, a board of trustees representative, and then it also had 6 people outside the community college: a business official, a legislator, academic researchers, and some others who we felt could give us some input on the matter. So we began our deliberations. We listened to a lot of experts, both inside of California and some national experts on the whole issue of student success. And after 10 months of deliberation, we came up with a draft report, 22 recommendations that we then took out to the field. I reported earlier on the fact that we are scheduled to appear to more than 30 different groups. Then we will meet this Wednesday to listen to those and to make some modifications in our present recommendations. We will certainly, this will be discussed today, but the Board of Governors has scheduled a special meeting on December 1st to once again go into much detail about these draft recommendations, and they will not take an action until January. In the meantime, after hearing from the Board of Governors, Our task force will meet once again on December 7th, and at that time, we will perhaps make additional changes. So this has been a very vetted, very open process. By the way, our meetings were always open, and we always had a goodly number of people who would come to the meeting. And so we had a lot of opportunity for input. Is it perfect? No. Is it controversial? Yes. Why is it controversial? Because it calls for change. And I've not yet found that any organization makes changes without some resistance. We like things the way they were, and inevitably, when you call for change, there will be some controversy involved in it. Some of these will simply be best practices, and there will be nothing other than citing best practices so that the colleges can look at those best practices and imitate them whenever possible. Some of them, as was pointed out, will call for regulations that the Board of Governors will pass. Now, you know the whole history of regulation is that first, there's a first reading, and then there's a second reading. So there, in other words, if you're concerned over the fact that these recommendations will become operative after they appear before the Board of Governors, I'll lay your fears about that. It'll take some time. Some will require legislation, and legislation always takes a great deal of time. So that tells you a little bit about the process. Now, I'll just give you a real quick overview of the 22 recommendations. They're in 8 chapters, and all of you perhaps have received the document. First, we feel like that we should encourage the meeting of high school teachers and community college teachers so that the high school curriculum can be better aligned with the college curriculum. Second, we feel like entering students is our first chance to really get these people on the right track. And so we call for assessment of all entering students, a common assessment. Right now we have 112 colleges, and we could have 112 assessment instruments. I don't think, most people think that makes sense, and certainly students are not well served by varying assessments. We want orientation, and we want within the first year for all students to come up with an educational plan. Now that's not in concrete, but we know that all the studies indicate that when students have a direction, they're much more likely to succeed. Next step, this would be the 3rd chapter. We want to incentivize successful student behavior. What are ways to do that? Well, one way would be to prioritize registration. If you've gone to a community college and accumulated over 100 units and maybe completed only 25, we don't really think that that student ought to take up a seat before our first-time students get the opportunity to enroll in order to transfer or in order for someone to get a job and they want to take our wonderful career technical programs. So right now, unfortunately, we're having to ration education. We don't like that, but that's a reality that's been forced upon us by the state. But if we're going to ration education, we ought to do it sensibly. We believe that avocational courses, which are good courses in some cases, but they don't quite equal the priority that transfer basic skills and career technical programs ought to have. In fact, that's not just our opinion, it's opinion of the legislature. They've stated very clearly that when we cut courses, if at all possible, they want us to avoid cutting courses that involve career technical education, transfer, and basic skills. We want to make sure that we align the curriculum or the course offerings with student needs, and that can be done by looking at the educational programs and having course offerings accordingly. We suggest that there are ways in which we might improve basic skills. We're not dictating what that should be, but we do know that if we, for instance, in a program that says we take somebody and start them at the 4th level, that the chances of their ever getting up to college level courses is almost nil. It's less than 10%. And so let's look at some ways in which we could improve our basic skill offerings. Perhaps we could contextualize them, placing them If someone is a construction student, for instance, they may be more likely to pass a basic skills math course that focuses on construction problems rather than just a general basic skills course. Revitalize professional development. We want to simply see that professional development, if at all possible, could include such things as how to work with basic skills students. Strengthen the chancellor's office. I will tell you that I didn't suggest that. That might come across as self-aggrandizing, but some people realize that right now, in order to appoint vice chancellors, we have to get approval of the governor's office. We also find that the Department of Finance often second guesses us in what we do. And so in some way or another, the chancellor's office could be more effective if it were strengthened. And finally, we want to align resources to implement student success, and that is to invest in what we call a student success initiative. You know, right now, often what we end up doing is we get a little money and we just simply say, increase your enrollment. Well, we would like to say, given the fact that we receive less per student than any other form of education in California, K-12, UC, CSU, that maybe we ought to put more emphasis on student success, where we could hire counselors, where we could do the things that would make for student success. So those are the recommendations. I know I've hurried through 22 recommendations with a lot of speed, and I do that really to benefit the audience. I know they wouldn't like to hear a 30-minute orientation on my part, but I do want to give the opportunity for our chair, who served extremely effectively, Dr. Peter McDougall, to add his comments, and Manuel Baca, who has also been very effective on our task force. And by the way, I can't tell you how good that the chancellor's staff has been. Our vice chancellors have been at most of the meetings. They have done a tremendous amount of legwork in getting this together. Amy Suppinger has been a wonderful executive director for us. Fortunately, we had foundation funding that permitted us to hire an executive director. And so we've met, and we will continue to meet. But, and so if one of the staff members wants to come up and add an explanation as this progresses this afternoon, I would invite them to feel free to do so. But first, Dr. McDougall.
Jack, thank you so much. I think, as he normally does, Jack did an outstanding job of presenting a good overview of a complex topic. And he did appropriately commend both Amy Suppinger and his staff for the outstanding job that they have been doing on this task force. We would not be where we are without either Amy's leadership or Jack's staff, and I might say the Chancellor has been there every step of the way himself and provided by his presence, by his familiarity and capability on the issues, has really done a wonderful job. The 2 points I would like to add is that I think that there are some issues that we have had to deal with, and I do think that one of the better parts of our plan was the extensiveness of sharing the draft recommendations with, if you will, the field of community college leaders. In addition to the 30 meetings that the Chancellor outlined, this entire report has been online since it has been produced, and there has been extensive online dialogue with the recommendations and comments going back and forth, and it's been a very, very healthy discussion. And the last part, and I would state that this came across so very clear from the open hearing that was held in Los Angeles, and that is the sense of passion, the commitment, the dedication that exists among professionals in the California community colleges. They feel very, very strongly about the programs they lead, the programs that work on behalf of students. And equally impressive, and I know all of us know this, but it continues to inspire, and that is the successes that have occurred almost against insurmountable odds, often due to these special programs and the level of support and excellent teaching and counseling that exists within our colleges. And though there may be some differences on the means by which student success will be hopefully strengthened, I don't think there is any disagreement on the ends. And that's very strongly communicated through the open hearing process. I do think that the task force members appointed have worked very, very hard and effectively, and I'm pleased with the quality of the report that has been produced. There will be obviously some modification after all of the deliberations that have occurred, but I think the essence of the report will stand the test very well.
Member Baca.
Yeah, I'll keep my comments brief because the Chancellor and Member McDougall have covered the main points. But I do want to maybe emphasize a couple of things. One, in regards to the discussion about access versus success, this document and the recommendations that are being put forth are not in any way intended, and I think every one of the members of the task force feels very committed to the idea of making sure that access is there, particularly for those that might otherwise be disproportionately impacted. So access is very important. I think as we move forward with this, I think that there is a commitment to make sure that that isn't diminished. But the overall intent of this, of course, is in terms of success. And during the past several months, we've spent a great deal of time, a lot of hard work on the part of Amy and the members and the Chancellor's staff on trying to make sure that we get those recommendations in a fashion that is understood as thoroughly as possible, so that intent is understood. And I think we'll continue to work through the rest of this month and over the next several weeks on making sure that the intent is there, so that there isn't some confusion about it. And I think it's important, as the Chancellor stated, that these are recommendations that are maybe general principles and ideas and goals that are going to help in terms of student success, and that the work will really come afterwards when we start looking at the implementation, whether it's in legislation or regulatory change or best practices, and trying to disseminate that out to the system. You know, it is still, as we speak, a work in progress. The recommendations that are being received, even as we speak, the ones that we have just will be receiving today, are very much going to be considered in terms of the final document that will go to this body in January. Thank you.
Very good. I'd like to go to public comment now. We have quite a number of speakers that we want to hear from, but I also want to ask Vice President Perez, we're going to need to keep to our time frame since we have so many speakers. Please respect the time period, as we have a lot to get through. So with that, Vice President Perez.
And Jerry, can you just confirm you're keeping time? Okay. The first speaker is Will Bruce from the California Community College EOPS.
Chancellor Scott, members of the board. First of all, I would like to thank Chancellor Scott and members of the Student Success Task Force for removing EOPS from the flexible language of the Student Success Task Force recommendations. While we find some of the recommendations favorable to EOPS mission and intent, and if I had more time, I would address some of the positive recommendations. However, because of the time constraints, we will focus on what we have concerns about. It is no secret that EOPS is one of the most racially diverse programs in the state, while any move toward decategorization would further divide the class system that supposedly does not exist, as well as undermine the very reason our programs were created to protect our students. We will continue to oppose any proposal that challenges the foundation of providing access to higher education to those with the greatest economic need. Specifically, the fast-moving timeline the task force is being forced to push, the block grant funding proposal in 8.1, provisions dealing with Board of Governors fee waiver in 3.2, and pushing students to non-credit basic skills in 5.2. The expedited timeline is greatly focused and moving very fast in order to legislatively fit without much consideration on how these unintended consequences would hurt those most vulnerable. It would be dangerous to move forward and without moving cautiously. To push these recommendations as they are would significantly change the mission of the community college, positioning success over access, when there's really no common definition of success at the community college, as you have heard from many of the colleagues. Slowing down for a detailed analysis that can be conducted with a sufficient time and involve all community college professionals, including the categorical representation, is needed to realize the impact these decisions would make to our community college system. We don't want to negatively impact a particular group at all. We don't think this document is entirely ready for prime time. We really want to be sure we do not negatively impact the most important part of the equation, our students. These consequences of some of these recommendations would benefit the privileged at the expense of the poor. 8.1, consolidated categorical programs. We continue to say no flexibility for EOPS and no block grant funding. A good example of flexibility and how it doesn't work is the adult basic education in high schools. Because of flexibility, adult basic education is almost non-existent. Again, we thank the board members for protecting EOPS by moving us from the flexible language. Thank you for listening to our concerns. We hope you will continue to listen to us. With that, with what little time I have left, I would like to thank Vice Chancellor Marlene Garcia, who publicly made statements at the town hall meeting in LA that the task force recognizes EOPS as a model program, that EOPS should be offered to more students. However, there's no mention of EOPS as a model program. I would hope that at the very least we get honorable mention in the document. We will welcome an opportunity to come to the table and discuss the best practice to model statewide what we have been doing for over 40 years. She also mentioned in 3.1 system-wide enrollment priorities. The task force said the EOPS, along with other protected groups, would not be affected by these recommendations and would still have priority before other groups. If this is the case, then this needs to be in writing, the final document, so we can get behind this statement as well. Student success starts with EOPS. Thank you.
Jose Vallejo, California Community Colleges, EOPS.
Thank you, Chancellor Scott and members of the board, for this opportunity to share with you our concerns with some of the proposals of the Student Success Task Force. My name, again, is Jose Vallejo, and like my colleague Will Bruce, I'm here to share some additional areas that we as an association find troubling and feel we will have a negative effect on students. Like Will stated, we do agree, we do like some of the components, but we don't have the time to share that at this particular moment. So what I want to concentrate on is the area of concern. One of the areas is Chapter 3, 3.2, Section A and B. Section A essentially requires students receiving a BOG fee waiver to identify a major or a goal, as stated. The concerns with this is that, in theory, this sounds really good, but in reality, it's not practical. As you may all know, 60% of students entering the community college system are undecided. That first year, that particular first year, it's a transition year, and many of them, it's an opportunity for many of them to explore and try to identify a particular goal. To penalize students essentially contradicts the basic plan or the basic principle of the California Master Plan in making California community colleges accessible and open to all students. As a counselor, I see these students quite often. And on average, I could tell you, they change their mind at least 3 times. In fact, I'm one of those students who changed his mind. And the third goal was a charm for me, and that's why I'm here. And many a times we do see students succeed once they identify that particular goal because they're enthused about what they want to study, and they move forward, and they complete their goals. We agree with the plan of reducing the student to racial counselor numbers, and we think that's appropriate and will be very beneficial to students. The other area I want to concentrate on is Section B, which requires students to meet institution satisfactory academic standards to be eligible for the fee waiver. We feel that this is not equitable for those students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged. There is already an academic probation dismissal policies in place that require students to maintain a 2.0 grade point average, and it follows the newly enacted satisfactory academic progress standards for federal student aid. These students, we feel that this will not be equitable because students who can't afford it, who depend on the BOG, once they don't meet that requirement, they're out of the system and we lose them. And those who may not meet satisfactory academic progress, but yet can't afford it, have an opportunity to get back to satisfactory academic progress. I want to thank you all for this opportunity. I think it's really nice to have an opportunity to come and share some input. Unfortunately, unlike the task force, that wasn't the case at the beginning, although that is happening now. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Fario Gonzalez, California Community College EOPS.
Good afternoon, honorable board members, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to address the Student Success Task Force recommendation. As Chancellor Scott mentioned, unintended consequences are kind of the area that I like to look into a lot for a young person like me. I am actually an ESL learner, a low-income student, and part of EOPS. I have great concern about recommendation 5.2, bullet 4. If we support this part of the recommendation, we will be pushing our educational disadvantaged students to non-credit. With the financial aid, especially when non-credit has been awarded and continues to be cut, you will basically be pushing our disadvantaged students to classes that do not exist. As I mentioned before, I'm an ESL student, and I'm an ESL learner. I continue to learn the English language as we go. I'm a first-generation immigrant, a low-income student, who was a full-time student and working over 40 hours per week. And like me, there are thousands and hundreds of there's thousands of students in the state of California who need financial aid to support their studies. This recommendation will limit their option to pursue higher education. Today, I stand in front of you as a faculty member with a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and pursuing a doctorate degree at UC Davis. And as Chancellor Scott mentioned on his first meeting, which I wasn't attending, we're not gonna make the Student Success Task Force a dissertation project. And I agree with him, because there's a lot of work ahead of us. But I do agree also with the changes. The ESL pathway is a long one, a lonely road, which requires a lot of necessary support. In the end, results of taking all of these recommendations added together is to close the doors to low-income students, educational disempowered students who stand to gain the most benefit from a community college education for themselves, their families, and for the economy of the state of California. Muchas gracias. Me agradece que me dejaron hablar un poquito acerca de estas recomendaciones. I would love to talk in Spanish in this building. I think it just needs it. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity. We're gonna be leaving you with some resources about our students and basically their stories, and we're gonna leave them there with your information here. So thank you, and giving us the opportunity to address these recommendations.
Georgiana O'Keefe Jury, California Community College CalWorks Association.
Good afternoon, Chancellor Scott and board members. My name is Georgiana O'Keefe Schwerin. I am the California Community College's Secretary for the CalWorks Association. I am also a coordinator counselor at Yuba College. The CalWorks Association represents 112 colleges and almost 40,000 CalWorks students who are also low-income parents statewide. Thank you for your time and your commitment to higher education in the state of California, and thank you for your time put forth toward reviewing the task force on student success recommendations. The CalWORKS Association strongly opposes the inclusion of the community college CalWORKS programs within the flexible funding category as defined in Recommendation 8.1 and asks you to exclude CalWORKS from any block grant funding recommendations. I wish I could sit up here and tell you today about all of our dedicated students, but today I must talk about funding. Last year, a little under 40,000 CalWORKS college students assisted California to meet federally mandated work participation hours. They met these hours by accessing CalWORKS funding specifically to assist them to receive education directly related to work. Inclusion of CalWORKS in a block grant will jeopardize and dilute services and in all likelihood lead to the loss of work participation rate and a $185 million federal penalty for the state of California. In addition to the above, without dedicated funding for the California Community College CalWORKS program and students, which Recommendation 8.1 would eliminate, $8 million in federal TANF funding and up to $26 million in maintenance of effort dollars would be jeopardized for the California Community College CalWORKS students. I ask you to not only consider this information while reviewing the recommendations, but I ask you to think of our CalWORKS students who are already meeting some of the task force recommendations. Look to CalWORKS for your best practices and as a model program. Thank you.
Dennis Frisch, FAC. Kevin Feliciano is next.
Dennis Frisch, President, Faculty Association, California Community Colleges. I believe you just received a copy of the FACS Journal, and FAC at the September meeting that you had at Butte College did present some preliminary feedback on the task force report as it existed then. That feedback really highlighted 4 issues. One was the role of full-time faculty in student success, and the fact that there's very little mention of that, if any, in the report. And then they highlighted also concerns that FAC has with consolidating categoricals for faculty, for student services, and for CTE. And that's on page 32 in the FACS Journal. I'm not going to go into detail on that. I think you can read the more of the details. What I would like to do, however, is call your attention to page 8 in the FACS Journal. It reproduces a motion that the FAC Board of Governors passed unanimously at their September meeting, which occurred after yours on that. And I'd like to read just a bit of it. FAC affirms the priority of open student access to California community colleges as a top priority. And then they highlight 3 means by which we can achieve that or continue to maintain that. Providing courses to all qualified students who seek them, reduction of student fees, and supplying student services to all who need them. And that's really the focus of my comments, the issue of access. Because we, in fact, join you in supporting the broader goals of the task force and what it is trying to accomplish. That is to increase student success. As faculty, of course, we're concerned about student success, and we do everything we can to promote that. As we look at the recommendations, we do see, however, that access as a social justice issue may be at some jeopardy if this report were to become reality as we currently look at it. And we recognize this is a project in process and that. But we'd like to really call your attention to our concerns that in many areas of the recommendations, there are things which, rather than promoting access, would possibly have the outcome of reducing access, especially for those parts of the population that are most eager to have higher education and are the least able to afford it. the disadvantaged, the immigrant population come to mind immediately. And this is where social justice enters into this, because we all know income gaps are widening, not lessening. Community colleges are an avenue that the state of California has traditionally held open to anyone who was desirous of receiving CTE training or transfer credits so that they could, in fact, move up, become part of the middle class, and enjoy those benefits. As we look at some of the recommendations,
I need your
criteria
final
for Bob.
comments, please.
Pardon?
I need your final comments, please.
Final comment. So as we look at these recommendations, we could highlight areas where there is exclusionary rather than inclusive types of recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Feliciano, Student Senate, California Community Colleges, and next is Dr. Gear, Trustee, City College of San Francisco.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Kevin Feliciano. I'm the president of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. I'm going to attempt to summarize the intent of 2.6 million students in 3 minutes, so please bear with me. So I'm just going to, we met over the weekend in General Assembly. Over 450 students from 81 colleges came together to talk about different issues affecting students in the system. We did take positions on recommendations between chapters 1 and 4. So we did get the bulk of the recommendations in. Again, we won't focus on the positive, but I'll save it for Wednesday. The timeline is quite fast. We understand that it is set by legislation, and we would like to support the extension to better inform and solicit input from students, because it is quite a document, 73 pages, and unfortunately we don't have the luxury of time to read and really understand. Even as myself, as I read this document, I find new things every time I read it. We did pass a resolution, again, urging the Board of Governors to include more student representation. The Chancellor did mention there are 4 faculty, I believe 3 presidents and a Chancellor. It's the Student Success Task Force. There's not a lot of students on there. 1 for 2.6 million students. I think it's a little unfair, and for someone who is that representative, it's a large job to represent Northern California, Southern California, the Central Valley, the urban areas, and the rural areas. All of our student needs are different, so we ask that you take that into consideration. Some comments from students that student success isn't just based in academics, but also includes health services, housing, and students with identifying learning disabilities. Another concern was that we ensure exemptions and appeal processes. Without those in place, we will be shutting out students. We understand that it will be locally determined, and we would be asking the colleges and districts to ensure the rights of the students as provided in AB 1725. There were also concerns about the foundations that were funding this project, their objectives and intent. And another concern that I will leave you with is that there is talk out there about all these recommendations and how they will affect the students. We do think that some of them are good. We do think some are bad, and some we have no opinion on. However, it is going to require a lot of funding. Some things I will highlight would be the increased need for counselors. We understand that with that, it couldn't drive the cost of instruction up. And there are arguments out there that still, even if we raise the community college enrollment fees, that we will still be the most affordable community college in the nation. But how many of them are state subsidized to the extent that we are? California chose to invest and prioritize education, and they're going away from that. So we do believe that California needs to reinvest in education, especially in higher education. I have other comments, but I'll save it for Wednesday. But I would like to thank the board for the opportunity to let me speak. Please consider adding more students to the task force. I understand that there are only 2 meetings left, but however, we are very adamant this is the Student Success Task Force, and the more students we can include, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Geyer, Trustee, City Colleges of San Francisco, and next is Lynette Nagal. I'm sorry, I can't read the writing. CCA, CTA.
Good afternoon. I'm Anita Greer, trustee from City College of San Francisco. I'd like to say hello to Dr. Scott and also to the Board of Governors. I wanted to personally come here today to read and to maybe explain why City College of San Francisco has rejected the Community College Trustee Task Force or College Task Force on Student Success. Of course, we realize that it was a draft report, and we realize that there are only recommendations, but I was encouraged when I heard Dr. Scott's presentation, and also Member Baca as well. For the most part, on October 27th, our 7-member elected board got together, and we submitted a special resolution, and this is the rejection of the California Community College Task Force on Student Success recommendation. I want to give you about 3 reasons why we rejected it, and then I'd like to give you 2 recommendations that we came up with. For the most part, we think that the task force on student success contains assertions, assumptions, and recommendations that are contrary to the value and to the mission statements contained in the City College of San Francisco strategic plan and our annual plan. Also, we are opposed to the draft report and the recommendations of the City College Task Force on student success because we think that it denies access to a community college education to many different communities, and it reduces local autonomy to serve these communities. We also believe in shared governance, and with that in mind, we submitted our recommendations to the Shared Governance Committee, specifically the Planning and Budget Council, the Academic Senate, and then the College Advisory Council, and unanimously they agreed with us. A couple of the recommendations that we would like for you to consider is that you continue to embrace an open access comprehensive model as detailed in the California internationally acclaimed master plan for higher education to ensure that all California adult populations have equitable access to an affordable, high-quality public education. And secondly, we recommend that the California Community College should adopt no policies attenuating local control and responsiveness to local communities because we believe that historically this success model will ensure student success. And, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Lynette Nagal, I'm sorry, it's Naga, okay. It's CCA CTA. And just a reminder for the audience, please print on your forms. It just makes it easier. Thank you.
I'm not sure it would have made it easier in that case.
It may not have, but.
Even if you print, my name's hard to pronounce.
It may not have, but it just makes it hard.
Yeah. Oh, Chancellor, members of the board, and especially my colleague from Rio Hondo, Manuel Baca, I'm very pleased to be able to speak to you today. I wanted to mention to you that CCA sent our concerns in a document to you. So I'm not going to go over that document because I know you can all read. But I would like to just focus on one of the issues in there, and that is the issue of funding. Many of the proposals here rely on additional funding. And I want us to keep in mind that we have 2 examples from the past of situations where proposals went forward, there was no funding, and stuff happened, and it wasn't good. These things did not get actually implemented. So if we look at AB 1725 and we read the provisions of AB 1725, many of them were not implemented because of lack of funding. And for the K-12, the same thing was true for NCLB. So I would ask the board to keep in mind that there needs to be a better handle on funding before thinking of implementing these recommendations. And we do ask you to take more time to analyze the issues in the report, to not rush ahead, and to give time to people, to others to comment. On a personal note, I would just like to say I am a teacher, and I see students every day, and the concept of student success that is contained in this report does not match up with some of the successful students that I have had. They have different goals from the way the report envisions goals, and I would like to see those students included in this report too. Thank you.
Leslie Smith, City College of San Francisco.
Good afternoon, Board of Governors. It's been my pleasure to work in the field of governmental relations for about 15 years, advocating on behalf of the California Community Colleges. And throughout those 15 years, our message has been one that's been very positive. And it's said that we have been California's solution, or we are California's solution. We provide solution to California's problems, whether it is economic development, the basic skills gap, or the issue involving transfer to a university degree. I think that we have been extraordinary advocates. I think we worked very closely with Senator Scott when he was in the legislature, and he was also a very strong advocate on our behalf. And I think that the public is incredibly supportive of the California community colleges. City College of San Francisco did a public opinion poll that showed that of the San Francisco likely voters, 87% who had an opinion were favorable. I mean, that's an extraordinary number for anyone in public service this day. So I would like to encourage that in this discussion of student success that we broaden that definition. It is more than certificates and degrees that we provide to California. It is an extraordinary opportunity for the adults of California to get access to educational opportunity and to create success in their life. I think that has been our message to the legislature. I understand that there has been some research reports that have focused specifically on certificates and degrees and tried to argue that we have not been successful for our students. But when you talk to our students, and we do several student satisfaction surveys at City College of San Francisco that are on our website, and I encourage you to take a look, and our students are successful. And on behalf of our faculty, I don't think they do anything except spend their entire careers trying to improve student performance and success. And so I hope that we continue to recognize that. I would not like us to go down a path where when we go across the street to the legislature, somehow we're not saying that we are an extraordinary benefit to the state of California and we provide an extraordinary opportunity for our students. So I encourage us, I would really like to see the tone, I mean, yeah, student success, we're all there for that. It needs to be a broader definition. And in terms of funding, on the front page of the Chronicle business section on Friday, 280 corporations out of the Fortune 500 paid no or very little taxes. There's money. City College of San Francisco Board of Trustees has also passed a resolution in support of the oil extraction fee that would bring significant revenue to the California community colleges. So I hope that we pursue other options besides just taking a look at a small population and potentially rationing of our educational opportunity. Thank you.
Going forward, if I can ask the public comments folks to come up and sit in the middle seat, we may be having some problems with the microphones. Sherry Schroeder from Foster and Kinship Cure Ed. Is that right? You corrected it.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. So I am Sherry Schroeder, and I am a foster parent. I'm also an instructional specialist and a program director for foster and kinship care education. So this afternoon, I'm here representing the 62 California Community College foster and kinship care education programs, and also the other 35,000 foster parents, kinship caregivers, and other resource families that our program serves. We ask your assistance to keep our existing $5.2 million Prop 98 funds intact and dedicated to foster and kinship care education. I know that you're talking about student success, and we too wholeheartedly agree with that. We also know that our foster youth are our most underserved and have some of the most dismal outcomes of any other youth that step foot in our California community colleges. And I've been doing this since 1985 when our program started. And I wholeheartedly know that I've always thought that someone was brilliant when they put foster and kinship care education into the community colleges. We have served our population beautifully. In fact, I think you could all feel incredibly proud of yourself. I know firsthand that we change lives and we make a difference. And this program, our program in Yolo County through Woodland Community College, is a model program. And every year I know that we're saving you, we're saving our county, we're saving our state absolutely millions of dollars, and first and foremost, we're saving lives. We're actually changing lives. And so the 35,000 people that walk through our doors in our community colleges within the foster and kinship care education program are life changers, and you too have made a difference for that. And I wholeheartedly ask that you do not allow this categorical flexibility. I know that there's been discussion. We have this $5.2 million. We draw down another $5 million basically in Title IV-E federal matched funds. I've heard there's some discussion that that could happen without dedicated funding and dedicated contracts and dedicated programs. I honestly don't think that there would be any way possible for our programs to continue should this flexibility go forth in the way that it's been written into 8.1 on page 63. As I'd like to conclude, there's so much that can be said, and I don't want to really put salt into the wound. I have Heidi, one of our other fabulous foster as a foster youth in one of our programs at our community colleges. I know too she went on to graduate, and she's now making the difference in the lives of the 23 foster kids that she's had in her house. So in conclusion, within the mission of our colleges, foster and kinship care education provides a critical resource to help developing promising futures while preventing the expenditure of millions of our county's dollars on group homes, residential, therapeutic homes, and treatment programs, notwithstanding the state's cost of incarceration and future pregnancies and generational cycles of abuse that continue without absolutely good foster homes. And I'm here to say, I'm a foster parent, and it takes people like me and you look in the mirror, we're the people that really need to be doing this to open the doors and to change lives. So foster and kinship care education contributes quality, cost-effective programs for caregivers. We are here making a difference to provide opportunities for better lives. Thank you so much, and please, please consider pulling us out of the categorical flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi Anderson, foster and adoptive parent.
Good afternoon, thank you. I've also submitted a copy of a letter that I wrote to the task force. This is actually my second letter to the task force asking you to protect foster and kinship care education. I was in foster care, I am a foster parent, I am an adoptive parent, and I also have been a kinship parent. This program is essential. I was so excited when I heard earlier that you guys are going to give priority to foster kids to have registration. It's wonderful that you're giving them a hand up, but please don't take the other hand and shove them down. If you eliminate this program, you are eliminating essentially all county licensed foster parents. You will force 60,000 foster kids into higher levels of care. I'm a county licensed parent, foster parent, and I am so proud that I am, because our kids stay with their communities, hopefully their churches, their schools, their friends. If they go to higher levels of care, they can truly be moved to anywhere in California in an agency home or group home. As a county licensed foster parent, I might get about $700 a month. If they go to the next level of care, you're starting at about $2,000. Fiscally, it's irresponsible. Morally, I find it objectionable. As an adoptive parent, I think it's also really important to note that this is National Adoption Month. I've adopted 3 children from the foster care system. To be an adoptive parent from a child from the foster care system, you have to be a foster parent. Without this training, you can't get licensed. Without this training, you can't maintain your license. So it's not just a matter of having classes for foster parents, it's a matter of having the education to support them continually. As a new foster parent, as a current foster parent, as an adoptive parent, as a kinship parent, these are critical classes. I was in foster care. I did go on and I graduated from community college, and it was because of the programs that I had access to and the support that my foster parents had. So I urge you to please remove this, 8.1. Please remove us. Just like EOPS, you've protected some of this. Please protect our program. It is crucial for our kids' success. Thank you.
Stephanie Bury, SEIU Local 1000.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Bury. I'm here representing SEIU Local 1000. I'm actually here representing the employees who work in the Chancellor's office, and we're here just to talk about our opposition to some of the items in 7.1, specifically the ones that would remove the Chancellor's office out of the executive branch, which would then take them out of civil service. Those employees who work there are talented and very committed to, just like you are, to making sure that students succeed in their work. They just believe that they deserve to continue to have the protections that are provided them in the Constitution via the civil service, and they're going to continue to fight to protect that. So we just oppose that part of the section, but we are supportive of a lot of the other parts of the, and we'll continue to fight that section. So thank you.
Michelle Pilates, Academic Senate.
Good afternoon. I will be general and brief. First of all, I want to thank Chancellor Scott, Vice Chancellor Russell, and Member Baca for participating in the Student Success Task Force presentation and panel that we had at the Academic Senate plenary this past Thursday. Unlike Kevin, I am not yet ready to actually tell you all the positions of the faculty. I also think it's premature. I'm quite confident that some of the most, or maybe I should say hopeful, that a lot of the most contentious aspects of the recommendations will change after Wednesday, which will make it a lot easier to have a dialogue about the parts that we can agree on and figure out how best to implement. The positions that the faculty took are best described as thoughtful. They were nuanced. The faculty had really considered the recommendations and thought them through, and I think there are some positions that the task force is going to be pleased that we took. There are elements that we all can support. The challenge is, how do you implement them? What does it look like? There are parts that sound great, just how do you make it workable? And I hope that there's an opportunity to figure out how you do make those parts work that we all can agree on as very valuable components to truly facilitate student success. And I look forward in the future, when we have the next iteration of the document, to sharing the faculty's positions with you all. Thank you.
I think Chancellor Scott would like to respond to a few items, and then we can have a bit of board discussion.
Well, first, let me thank all of you who came in front of us and expressed your opinions in a very articulate manner. I can guarantee you that a number of these items will be taken very seriously. We've already begun to discuss, for instance, the whole issue of block granting. I'll tell you why, that the whole idea of block granting was that we now have over 20 different categorical programs, which means that all these 20 we have to report on, and the idea was that maybe we could block grant some of them and give the local campus the flexibility not to defund them all, but simply to change within that block. So remember that those silos, whatever they are, but some of you have made a very good case for the fact that some of these items maybe need to be protected, and we're going to take that in consideration. The issue of foster care, for instance, and we also heard some very powerful testimony about acquired brain syndrome and so forth. So we're going to look at that. So all I can say is that perhaps we will have less block granting, but it does have some merit in the sense that it didn't say you would be defunded. The whole idea was to let a campus make choices within, say, 4 or 5 categorical programs, not to take any money out of it, but to shift the money between categorical programs. But we'll consider that, so I wanted to address that. Also, those of you who are concerned about that a student, if they don't identify a major, they would be pushed out. The whole idea is to get them to identify, but not to say that you can't change your mind. The whole idea was that some way or another, when individuals are more directed, they're more likely to finish. But I guess the one issue that I really want to address is the concern that some of you expressed that some way or another these recommendations would push out the ones who were poor, immigrant, come from immigrant families or first generation. I think if you'll think for a moment, our recommendations in this task force will actually give those students more access, and let me explain it. The last time we looked at statistics, there were 140,000 students that didn't get to register. We discovered that our first-time students went down by 133,000. So if you think we're not eliminating the poor now, you're wrong. If you're a first-time student and you're poor, you probably could easily be one of those who doesn't get to enter community colleges. That's not good. So when you say we don't need to ration education, let me be blunt with you. We're rationing education right now, but we're doing it in a very haphazard manner. Right now, a lot of colleges simply say continuing students go first, first-time students go second. It doesn't matter if you're a man that's taken golf 6 times and enjoys taking golf or wants to take aerobics. You get to go ahead of that first-time student because you're a continuing student. I have to tell you very bluntly, I don't think that's fair. And these recommendations say that avocational students are the ones, they can come, but they shouldn't be ahead of those who come seeking job training or seeking transfer. In a recent poll, it was indicated that when the public rated what they considered the most important thing for community colleges, here's the way they would rank them. Transfer first. Second, job training, career technical education. Third, basic skills, and lifelong learning was 4th. I won't identify the colleges, but let me tell you a little bit about some of our courses we're now offering. Ceramics for seniors, current topics for seniors, aerobics for seniors. You say, is that bad? No. But do you think that's more important than chemistry for the first-time student, or math, or English, or psychology? So what we have suggested here is that those individuals who come with, an educational plan, that we're going to give them priority registration. Now, we can still do it the way we do it now and just say, well, if you show up and you're a continuing student, and you could have been there for the last 10 semesters, signed up for 150 units and finished 25, you're ahead of that serious student who comes there, recent graduate from high school. So we're not eliminating the poor. We are ensuring access for the individual who comes, and it doesn't matter what they can have a GPA of 1.5 in high school and be a first-time student, and they get in. That's not what we're doing. We're not saying there's a GPA requirement, but we are saying you do have to make some progress. And if you've been there for 10 semesters and you're not making progress, okay, if we have room in a class, you can register. But we're going to give other people priority in terms of registration. That's fair. So let's don't talk about the fact that we don't want to ration education. We're already doing it, not because we wanted to, by the way. I love the way the community colleges were 10 years ago. Come one, come all. And we educated the individuals who just wanted to come and maybe take guitar as a hobby. That's fine. Maybe that made that lifelong learning person a little more enriched. But if it's tough times like there are now, let's don't crowd out the students who come, who are first-time students, who clearly are the person who's out of work and for the first time shows at a community college because they got laid off and they want to become a nurse or a firefighter and they can't get in. So I want you to understand that's what this task force is recommending. And I want you to clearly understand that we're not in any sense trying to deny access. We're just saying that our priorities, given the fact that the state won't give us the money. If the state wants to give us the money, we will educate everybody. But even the legislature, when they cut our funds, both 2 years ago and this year, They cut 8% 2 years ago, and they cut 5% this year. They put in there legislative intent that if at all possible, we would not cut courses in transfer, career technical education, and basic skills. Now, we can go on the way we are now and not do anything. And one day, some legislator is going to make a list of the courses you can't offer anymore. They did it one time, and they'll do it again. I would rather us do the reforming rather than simply turn it over to somebody who doesn't know our system very well. I'm as proud of community colleges as I can possibly be. I'm proud of the fact that we do serve poor students. When I say poor students, I'm not meaning academically. We serve those who are academic. We give them a second chance. I'm talking about somebody, we have the average lowest income of any segment of higher education in California. So we're serving those students, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of those first-generation students who come to us and suddenly they're come alive. But I'm not quite anxious enough to say they don't get first chance at a course and say, well, somebody who, you know, just doesn't want to pay the fee down at the athletic club and they like to take our aerobics course. Well, maybe that's not bad, but I don't think it quite equals priority. So that's all I'm trying. I want you to consider that. We will look at all of these recommendations. I want you to know that we do believe in full-time faculty. The reason we don't have more full-time faculty is the state hasn't given us the money to get full-time faculty. And the reason we had that recommendation on the chancellor's office is that we well know that CSU and UC are independent of the state. They're no longer a state agency, and they are able to operate with greater flexibility than we are. That doesn't happen to be my first priority. I took on this job knowing full well the limitations of it. They get a little frustrating sometime when you want to make an appointment and you have to go through the governor's office or you have to go to the Department of Finance, but we'll live with that. But I'll tell you, these recommendations that have to do with student success, they're important. And I just want to give you our rationale. You may not agree with it. I think we've had some wonderful presentations this afternoon, and I will tell you that we're going to take them seriously. And as I said, we've already begun discussions on the whole issue of block grants. Whether we're going to completely do that or do it partially will be a matter of discussion. And you've made some very powerful statements about block grants. And so this isn't over yet. The Board of Governors here are listening to what you have to say. I didn't mean to go on quite this long, but I'll simply close out, and I know the rest of the board wants to say things.
Okay. Thank you, Chancellor. And members, we've just got a little bit of time for comment here, and as you know, we'll be having our special board meeting December 1st in San Diego, where we can get into greater depth on this. I would just like to say also that I do thank everybody for expressing their opinion, and it gives this board the opportunity to hear your concerns, investigate them further, and all of us come up to our own conclusions vis-a-vis the priorities that you laid out. Speaking as only one member of the board, I'd like to encourage Chairman McDougall, Member Baca, the Chancellor, other members of the task force to keep on being bold. I think these recommendations are an incredible piece of work that have been vetted, researched, and put forth in a very, very courageous manner with eyes on what's best for our students and our system. And these changes are, if enacted, are going to be very, very difficult to see through. But if we're going to do this, let's be bold about it. And I think that's what you've done. And I hear everybody's concern, but as the Chancellor alluded to earlier, change is very, very hard, and we tend to resist it. Vice President Perez.
First of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming out and make comments today. I think it's really important that we hear the voices of the people that are actually in the system today, as well as the students. As said before, these are recommendations, and I think there still is opportunity to continue to have dialogue. We are trying to move forward some recommendations that are focused on student success, but we also want to ensure that we're open to listening to comments. I will save most of my comments for our December 1st meeting, but the one thing I do want to encourage the task force to do, since this is about student success, we only have 2 meetings left of the task force, is to really consider adding more students to that task force. I really do believe there needs to be a larger student voice on that task force, so I would encourage you to consider that.
Member Davis Lyman.
Thank you to the people, to Dr. McDougall for taking this task on at this time with all the expertise that he has and experience working at an outstanding community college, Santa Barbara Community College in the state of California. And to the Chancellor and to Manuel Baca, board member, and to the staff that was at the robust discussion that occurred at the Academic Senate last, I believe it was Thursday. And to all of you in the audience who are sharing your deep felt concerns about our students in the state of California. I'd like to know, now that you've heard, and the Chancellor has been at so many meetings, listening to comments and making comments, what I'd like to hear is, Wednesday is a very important meeting of the task force. Could you share with us what is going to happen, how these comments are going to be synthesized, how they're going to be prioritized, how they're going to be heard, what will happen with the numerous kinds of comments and pleas that have been given to the task force? I'd like to know a little bit about that, how you see that process, how you see it maybe affecting the report. Thank you.
Member McDougall.
I'll start, and of course, if the Chancellor wants to add, he will. But the task force members will receive as much direct written testimony and a synopsis of written evaluations as we have available. For example, I referred earlier to the discussions that are online. They have been extensively reviewed. The major points that were made by the individuals who chose to respond online, unable to participate in a meeting, have been summarized. They've been highlighted. The numbers who maybe expressed disagreement with those, et cetera, have been noted. So there'll be a report on all of those discussions. There'll be summaries of what took place at the town meetings, the 3 town meetings that have occurred thus far. There'll be another one in Oakland that the Chancellor will be attending following the meeting. But the task force members will have, to the best capability of the staff, to provide a summary of the feedback that has been received. And we will review that feedback, and we will look at the recommendations that have been very thoughtfully determined to see how the feedback impinges upon them. I think you had a very good understanding of the complexity of the issue by what Dr. Scott said in his comments following the testimony. It's not that there's a disagreement on the part of anyone on the task force with what is taking place in the community colleges. Whether it's lifelong learning for adults, whether it's access to recreational programs, for the most part, if the funds were available to do that, that's the greatest of all worlds. But that is not the reality with which the system is dealing, as, again, the Chancellor pointed out, 133,000 new students not being able to be accommodated. So we have to try to deal with the reality, not only what that leads to student success, but what provides the greatest access for those most in need of what it is that the community colleges provide. And we're balancing those elements, and the task force members will have as comprehensive amount of information as possible about it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, one more comment, Member Ramos.
Yeah, I appreciate how complicated this is, and there's so much history involved in what we're revisiting, and so much uncertainty going forward in terms of how this might actually play out in a way that works for all the involved interests. One thing that I'm not sure is feasible, I'm not sure it is timely, but that I would suggest might be considered even as early as the meeting on Wednesday, is the possibility of phasing some of this work, either in pilot projects that might test and tease up what works and what doesn't in applying many of these recommendations, or perhaps thinking about phasing in some other ways where over a period of time some of these changes can be made rather than just going wholesale from one day to the next to a wholly different approach. So I don't have any pretense that I have a formula in mind or magic wand to wave that would sort of discern how best to cut at that. But if there's any way to think, at least in the consideration of the task force, of doing this in smaller bites, doing it in ways that help us craft as we go along response strategies to things that might not be playing out as we had hoped, or lifting up examples and taking them to scale where they have exceeded expectation, that might be a more efficient, more acceptable, more learning-driven way of making some of the important and I think essential changes that we want to make here, but in a context where they can be digested perhaps more favorably than all at one moment, all at one time, with a lot of people perhaps having misgivings about how these things face them as they go into it. That's just food for thought.
Last word to Chancellor Scott.
We keep in mind that all of these will be still recommendations even in January if the board accepts them. And therefore, like for instance legislation might take the form in some instances of a pilot program. So this doesn't deal with implementation. So we hear what you're saying, and as I tried to lay some concerns out there, that, you know, if the Board of Governors adopts, let's say 20 recommendations, those 20 recommendations will not be implemented on February 1st. They will be, in some cases, simply best practices. Some cases they will be phased in. Some cases they might be able to be implemented rather quickly. All of that's to be determined.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute or 12-minute break or so, and see you back here shortly.